Hi, I'm Kathy from Stitch It Together, and today I am trying to show you via a simulation how I am using Select and Sew to place the Dresden Plate blocks that I am quilting that are on my machine. The difficulty with simulation has been that you use a marking and it's hard to simulate a marking. But I think I figured out a way to do that. So if you will bear with me, you will also need to use your imagination a little bit. So I'm going to open up Select and Sew, which is what you would also do at your frame. And I am going to choose this pattern, which is a tracing of my actual quilt block. So what you're going to need to imagine is that this tracing is actually what I'm seeing at the frame. So I'm going to go to my marking tool. I'm going to erase what I have because I had practiced this earlier. So I'm erasing it. So if you can imagine with me that what you're seeing right here on your screen is not a pattern, but that I am looking at my quilt top. So there's a couple things that I'm going to do because I need to trace. The first step of this process is that I need to trace using the marking tool my quilt block. Some of the things that I'm going to do to make that faster is I'm going to take the foot off of my machine. I like the Super Glide foot, but I'm going to take the foot off of my machine and I'm going to trace up to three of these at one time. I have five that are in a row, but I have found that when I do too many, QCT slows down an awful lot because these patterns are very large that I'm using. So I'm not going, and because of quilt drawing, I might not want to do a whole row at one time, but I'm only going to do two or three at a time. So the first thing that I'm going to do again is I'm going to take off that foot on my machine because this is a lot of tracing. That's going to make it go faster. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a thumb mouse connected to my USB to make the process of the marking go faster as well. So those are two of the things that when I'm standing at my frame, I do. So if this is my quilt block and I'm looking at it, I am going to the toolbox and I am picking the mark, I'm selecting my marking tool, and there's going to be, I'm going to mark the entire thing. And what I need to be sure that I get is each one of the little petals where the width of the petals are. And I want to make sure I get the highest point of every petal, but it doesn't need to be perfect because this is not going to be stitched out. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that when I go into Select and Sew, I have enough detail that I will know whether the pattern is going to fit or not. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to scroll in so that I can see, and I would just start using my marking tool to mark the pattern. Add. You can see where it's turning darker is where it is the marking tool. And so I don't want to waste a lot of this video with me using the marking tool. And so I am going to pause now while I mark the whole thing. All right, so now what I've done is I have gone around the whole outside of my Dresden plate, and then I took one line to go in because again, this is not going to stitch out, and I went around the circle because I have two different patterns for this one Dresden plate. I have the one that goes on the outside, and I have one that goes on the inside. So let me scroll back out. Now, at this point, if I wanted to trace another one, that's what I would do. I would be able to add a marking. You go right here, or I could just have a line that goes across because again, remember that this is not going to stitch out in any way. It's just to help you place the pattern. So you can either create a new marking or not. But if you wanted to create a new marking, you say add markings right here. You just have to call it something else. I would just say two. I would use numbers. You could call it second. You could call it whatever you want. And now I can start a new marking if I wanted to. Right here, I could start a new marking. So I'm going to say remove last, just remove it. So once I'm done marking what I want to place, I'm going to immediately close out of out of Select and Sew right here, close out. I'm going to open up in PatternCAD, and there's a box right here called Safe Area. I'm going to click on that box. So now my marking is going to be there. And so this is also a way where you can practice using simulation mode is just how I did that. I made a block out of my pattern, and then I manipulated the fact that I have pro, so I have advanced placement. So I brought that block into select and sew, and then I practiced tracing it. So you may want to do the same thing that I'm doing right here, or you could be standing right at your frame when you're doing this. So now what I would do if I was standing at my frame is I want to take that thumb mouse off and I want to replace it with an actual mouse. And the reason is that to use all of the functions and the edit features inside of PatternCAD, it's going to be an awful lot easier for me and it's worth the effort to use an actual mouse. So I would disconnect the thumb mouse and I would get the actual mouse to roll around to get to all my functions here. So this is going to be just like using a template and that I can see it, but I cannot edit it. I'm going to grab the first pattern. I'll go to select pattern. This is the pattern that I'm using for the outside. It's going to come in. I have tried very hard to get this to save at the right size so that it would come in closer to the right size, but I just haven't been able to be successful at that. I've tried many different things. But anyway, so you can see that there are a lot of nodes in this. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to say, turn off my nodes. It's actually not turning them off, it's making them invisible. So I've selected this button, but they're all still there. And now I want to start sizing this. So I'm going to say to the select section right here, and I'm going to say unselect all in case I've touched something I didn't know about, and then select all so that it should be selecting all my nodes. If I have any question about that, I can tap right here and you can see everything is selected, but then I can't see what I'm doing. So I'll make them indivisible again. And I want to go to the size. So when you're editing something, you need to make sure that first you're in edit, then you're in, let me see if I can move that so you can see that. So first you're in edit, then you want to say select, then you need to tell QCT what you're selecting. In this case, we're selecting all. Then you choose an action. So our action is going to be that we're going to size something. So the menu is going to change and we have something called the ratio lock here. And I do want to lock it. That's so that everything will not change its perspective. I can make this bigger and smaller and it stays in the same roughly shape that it is, just the whole thing will get bigger and smaller instead of in one direction or the other. So I'm going to lock that. I'm going to change my step. My step controls on how much each one of these buttons changes the size in any one click. And tiny is going to be much too small. So I'm going to change to medium and I'm going to start sizing this. There we go. So now I'm probably going to change my step, maybe to small now, and I'm going to want to make this bigger. I can already tell that the rotation is not on for this. So you can see how it's not lining up with the rotation. So I can choose to size it first, or I can choose to rotate it first. It doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to finish sizing it. For me, what I was trying to make sure that I did, if this is my inside circle, there's going to be a pattern that goes in here. I wanted to make sure that at least none of the stems were going to go inside of that circle. So I will be happy so long as that is what I'm using as to one of my measures is it placed okay for me. So let me size this up just a little bit. So I want to get this out of those lines. So I'm going to say, let's move it a little bit. I can change my action to move, and then these controls will change. And let's see if I can move it up a little bit. And maybe I will go to tiny now. And that's going to be good enough for me. None of these are inside of my circle. So I'm going to be happy with that. So I'm going to work now on rotating this. So I'm going to, again, I can go to select. I can go unselect all and select all if I have any question about whether everything was selected or unselected or what was selected. So you go to select, you make sure you're in edit, you go to select, you need to choose what it is you're going to be doing. And I need everything selected. So select all, then you choose an action. I'm going to choose rotate and this menu in here changes to the rotate menu. So I don't think it really matters which way I go. It looks like I'm kind of right in the middle. So I'm going to leave. I'm not going to reverse this. I'll just leave it this way. Let's start with 5 and see what happens. More than that. Okay, I'm getting closer. So maybe now I want to go to 1. Okay, now with that, that looks better to me. And I can see that like it's pretty tight right here and it's not as tight right here. Some of them in or some of them out. And I could play with the size buttons and the move functions if I wanted to with this one. But for me, what I like to use is transform group. So I'm going to select that. And then that's the action I'm choosing. And now I have a new menu. And there are 3 different ones right here, 3 different choices. The one that I want to use for right now is warp. I'm going to get all these different boxes and I can use these handles and the nodes to warp this pattern. And so I am just going to play with it a little bit. I'm going to pull it out a little bit right here. So you can see that it pulled out a little bit, but maybe I want to shove it this way a little bit. So I can actually do that a little bit. I can shove it that way. So to me, it looks like it's fitting in there a little bit better. This one looks like I'm just going to kind of go around and make little adjustments to this. Okay, that looks like it's inside of the box to me, but this one looks like it's outside. So I'm going to just push it in a little bit. So that's looking better to me, but now it looks like it's arced a little bit. So maybe I want to bring it down a little bit, see if I can get it shaped a little bit better. I'm just going to maybe keep pulling on it a little at a time. So maybe I want to work to this one now. Maybe out that way. I can play with this an awful lot to get it to kind of rotate a little bit. I know that I'm never going to get it perfect. So what I want to do is get it good enough. That's all I'm really looking to do. It's never going to be perfect unless I was willing to place each one of these petals individually. I could probably get it closer if I wanted to do that, but I don't. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to have to live with good enough. And I have decided that I would rather them be a little bit inside or touching the line than outside because these are all prints that are in my Dresden block, my Dresden plates, but it is a white solid that's outside and it will show a little bit more if it comes outside of the block versus inside. And so this is not perfect and I could play with it more if I wanted to, but I'm just going to call this, actually, maybe I want this one to come in just a little bit more. I'm going to be happy with this. I'm not going to get it perfect, so that looks good enough for me. But now I need to do this center block. So let's talk about the layers that I'm using. I have my actual marking, which is acting like a template. And so I can't do anything with that one. It's just there, which is good. I want to be able to see it, and I can see it. This one is my active layer that has my pattern on it right now. So if I need to bring in another pattern, I am going to have to swap layers, and I can absolutely do that. So I'm going to say layers, swap layers. This is going to change color. It's on my bottom layer now. I'm going to go get the one that goes in the center of this right here. I'm going to say open, and now I need to edit it. So I'm going to make sure I'm in edit, select all, and I'm going to size it. Let's change this step to much bigger. Just going to size it down. And maybe we'll try a little bit. And I can move it a little bit if I want. Okay, that looks like it's more centered. And I could play with this with the size and move it again, though I feel like transform is my friend. And so I feel like that works faster for me to just then, oops, I lost it. When I zoomed in, I have to choose it again. Transform. There we go. Warp. That's what I want. Just gonna pull on these until I get them where I want. Like, and that looks good enough for me. And maybe this one needs to come in just a little bit. Yeah, that is going to be good enough for me. I'm happy with that. So now I need to bring them back together where only this one would stitch out. Now I don't want that. So I'm going to say layers. I'm going to merge the bottom back up to the top. Everything is now on the active layer. And so now I can go directly to quilt on this. I'm going to say quilt, and it's going to tell me I need to save the pattern. I don't want to save it over a perfectly good pattern. I want to call this something out else. So I'm just going to say 1. That's usually what I do. I'll say enter, and I can save right over 1 every single time to get back into select and sew. So here we are. My pattern is placed just as I left it in PatternCAD. And now I'm going to say quilt, and it's going to give me a message. And again, notice that the pattern that was in there before is gone. So I'm just going to say quilt, and it's going to say the pattern has not been placed. Do you wish to proceed? But I did place it. I didn't place it in select and sew. I placed it in PatternCAD. So do I want to proceed? Yes, I do. So I'm going to say yes. Now, this is going to have a jump stitch in it because remember, I have 2 patterns here. But other than that, that's exactly what I need it to be doing. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my bobbin right here. It's going to stitch the center one first. I'm going to say so. You will want to put your foot back on, obviously, before you sew. If I didn't say that before, I don't think I did. You would want to put your foot back on before you do this. So now what I would want to do is pull the bobbin. So when you're finished, you would want to pull the bobbin, and then you're going to say select, move to next. That's going to move your machine. You do not want to use optimize to remove those jump stitches because this is an actual jump stitch. And if I try to do that, it would sew this line. I don't want to do that. It's just going to have jumps, and I'm fine with that. It'll stitch the other one out. I wish it was this fast in real life. This pattern takes quite some time to stitch out. So while this is stitching and now it's finished, I will tell you that when some tips with your marking, if you have patterns that are very easy, you may not need to, or geometric shapes even that are pretty fast, you might not need to remove your foot. It is not a requirement for you to move your foot. These are pretty complicated and they take some time. And I just found it easier to remove the foot so that I wasn't having to use the needle jog function up and down as I went. And again, I in the simulation I'm doing 1 pattern, but I could have done up to 2 or 3. I wouldn't have done more than 3, and I would have used the same process inside of PatternCAD to manipulate my layers, going back and forth with the swap layers and introducing a new pattern every time to get all my patterns in there. Just when you are using your marking tool, remember that you don't have to be perfect. Really what you're looking for is you want to be the highest, you want to see the highest point, and you want to make sure that you get these divots in there. And there'll be critical points in your pattern too, if your pattern is different, whatever one it is. You don't have to be perfect with this. You just need a marking that is good enough for you to actually place your pattern. So I hope you find that helpful. That's how I am using the Select and Sew to place these patterns. Happy quilting!